This is the Infinite Receiving Podcast, helping conscious leaders tap into a wealth of abundance across all areas of your life and business. I'm Susie Ashworth, and I'll be sharing with you how you can upgrade your reality through quantum transformation, because you are ready for infinite receiving. Hello, you gorgeous human being. It is Susie Ashworth here, and you are listening to the Infinite Receiving Podcast. And I have got a juicy one for you today. I'm really excited to be introducing to you a friend, a mentor, a person that I have looked up to in business for many, many years. Welcome to the podcast, the gorgeous, the incredible Jadah Sellner. How you doing?
Ooh, I'm so excited, Susie, for us to have this conversation. This is just so beautiful, and juicy is the right word.
Yeah. And I really have to give you so much credit in terms of the way that I look at life. Oh, I feel emotional. The way that I look at life and business, like the lens that I really operate from now, I absolutely know the seeds were planted when I worked with you. And you really leading from that place of love through everything that you do. And I am really curious because you have had so much success. You are a multifaceted entrepreneur and have had various businesses. I'm curious about whether love was the thing that you started with. Like, did you always know that love was the answer, or was it a journey to getting to where you are right now?
Such a beautiful question. And yes, it has always started with love, even from the first brick and mortar business, Little Sprouts Playhouse, that I started with my husband on the island of Kauai. And my father, who's no longer physically here, when I was growing up, would say, do something that you love, and also marry someone who is doing what they love. I don't care if they're a garbage man, garbage person. And so for me, my journey, even in the getting paid and working from someone else, has always gone through that filter of doing something that I love, something that I'm passionate about. And I know that not every child gets that type of download from their parents, but I definitely did. And I was also very supported in exploring a lot of different interests and kind of following the muse and where I feel excited, and being able to quit and let go of something like karate. Like, I think my karate coach or something like punched me in the stomach or something. I was like, this is not for me. Like, I am not here for this. And so it's interesting for me to think about those parallels, because I've also used that as an entrepreneur for over 15 years. If something doesn't feel good, is no longer working for me, I don't have a fear in stepping away, letting go, and turning in another direction to find something that does feel good.
Yeah. So you started off in your brick and mortar business. Can you tell us about that story and why ultimately you let that go to start something else?
Yeah, it's interesting because I open up my book, She Builds, with my husband on the car windshield in his boxers in the middle of the night, and us having a fight. So just so people know, this business did not end up being so successful. We were definitely struggling, fighting over money that we did not have. But in 2008, we moved to Kauai. Our daughter was 13 months at the time, and nobody was hiring. My husband got a real estate license. Nobody was hiring him. And so we really had to create our own economy. Like, how do we take care of our family? We're on this island. And so we opened up a brick and mortar studio, and it was a play and learning center for kids because I wanted a yes place for my daughter. And I thought, well, if there's other people that probably want this space too. And even in that business, because I know I'm known for community building with simple grain smoothies, but that business existed because I started a mom's group called Ohana Mamas for free, building this network of parents and moms with children. So I already had this built-in kind of customer audience for me to say, hey, we've opened up this play and learning center. And what we noticed is that parents wanted to pay to go away while we played with their kids, where the original business model was we wanted parents to stay and play with their kids in the space. And so we pivoted to a Montessori-inspired preschool. And what we noticed was, even though we pivoted the business model in order to serve what people were willing to pay for, we weren't feeling excited and engaged in that offer. And I think a lot of people say, product market fit. Yeah. And to me, what I've learned from my mentors is we need to build businesses that are a product maker fit. And so when we pivoted, it actually wasn't a good business model for us. And we ended up moving into our physical space, our business, because we couldn't afford to pay for our rental lease and the business lease. And so to me, I'm like, online business feels like a piece of cake because you're like, your website is your digital home. You don't have this high monthly fee that you're having to pay. And so we ended up closing that business and liquidating all of our assets and actually moving into my in-laws' house in California. So it was a worst case scenario, when you're like, okay, like if this doesn't work out, what happens? And being an adult, a mom, a wife, someone who had shared, we had this business, living with my in-laws was really hard on the ego. And like, what do you tell people from this space and place when you're still trying to find your way?
Yeah. I am curious about the start of the community. So you decide you're going to put together this free mums group. How many mums were in that space? And was the intention really just for you to find a community of people like you? Mm-hmm. Like, was that just the purest of the intentions?
Yes. The intention was, I didn't know anybody on this island. I'm a new mom. I had actually joined tried to join a mom's group, and it was so exclusive. Like, everyone had already had their established relationships, and it just felt like it just didn't feel good because I couldn't get in and it didn't feel welcoming. And so that's where that love piece comes in, where I want everyone to feel seen and heard and like they belong. And so I went on meetup.com. And I was just like, I just need to find one friend, but I'll start this mom's group and do things differently. And so truly, I remember having these meetups and people would RSVP, and then there would only be one person that would show up. But I was like, I'm going to show up for that one person, and we're going to have a play date, and we're going to let our kids run around the park. And many of those people that showed up in the early days became my closest friends and people that I could lean on. And then the group has grown to hundreds. So that was kind of the space and place where I was just really feeling my own need for wanting community and connection and belonging. But then as we were trying to figure out how do we make money, the business idea that I had was actually trying to replicate something that existed in Los Angeles, California, which is we have these indoor play centers. And like, there's nothing like that on this island. You either have to go surfing or all those pieces. And so it was kind of just great synchronicity that I started a community for me to meet my own needs for connection, that then also became a way for us to build that business model out.
I think it's also super interesting what you just said there, that actually the idea itself was not a brand new idea. It's something that you had seen working in LA and it was like, okay, I'm going to bring it over. In your opinion now, on reflection, why do you think that it didn't take off in the same way as it had done in LA?
That's a great question. And I think, I mean, I don't have the complete answer, but if I reflect and think about it, people didn't understand that model yet, right? And also, it's a very small island. So we don't have the same concentration of people that understand that. So they understood daycare, preschool, not to just play and hang out with my kid.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things. And also, I'm thinking about this because my husband and I, we have a brick and mortar creative studio. Like we're kind of back right now. Like we have a physical space again. And I noticed it kind of reminded me of having our space before, where you have all of these ideas and you're just trying to see what thing is going to make the money, but you're all over the place, which is actually really difficult to market when you have so many different offerings and things going on at the same time, and you're just two people with also a toddler in tow. And so I think we were a little bit all over the place. And when we had this preschool, this Montessori preschool, it felt like a very clear offer that people could understand and get in something they had invested in before in other ways. And so our vision was so big that people couldn't catch up to it yet. And so I think that was a piece of it, of just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and nothing was quite sticking.
I think that is really important, because there are so many creatives, there are so many big visionaries who listen to this podcast. And sometimes, particularly in the beginning, having something very tangible, very specific, that is going to provide is answering a very specific need. There is a very clear outcome that you can talk about, is super powerful. Now, you talked about the worst case scenario and ending up in your in-laws' home. How did you process the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, and all of the things that I have no doubt were present for you at that time? How did you move through that?
Yeah, it was very challenging. There was embarrassment. And also, there was a difference between me, because when I started the brick and mortar business, it was during when the economic downturn happened. So we're back in that. So this is the best time to be testing, experimenting. This is where millionaires are made, during these economic downturns, when we have to get really creative and innovative. And I remember I had a friend who also had a brick and mortar on Kauai, and she decided to go back to kind of like a 9 to 5. I'm done with this entrepreneurship game. And for me, the difference was I wasn't done. I knew that I was going to figure this out, and I didn't know how or when. And so that was kind of when I got interested in the online space. And I remember my business partner and I, we were in a mom's group in LA, Jen Hansard. We had started a parenting blog called Family Sponge, which we would move on to create simple green smoothies. But during that time, I remember we were creating our e-zine, our weekly newsletter. And I knew the only people I knew were the people that I knew, which was my friends and family. So I had a coming out letter. Like I truly sent an email, kind of like personal email from my Gmail, might have even been AOL, who knows, right? But I was like, these are the only people I know, and I just have to get current with my people and let them know, here's this new thing that I've built and created. We shut down this other thing, and here's what we're stepping into next. Please follow along, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, like all of those things. It was just, I still had to take care of my family. So even though I was in the like embarrassment and, oh shit, like this sucks, I couldn't give up on the dream, and I had to let people know, because they were the only people that I knew, that here's what I'm up to now. So I think it's important for us, when we're in these seasons of transition and uncertainty, that we get current with ourselves. Like, where are we? Like really orienting our nervous systems, our bodies. Where are we? And then you've got to get current with your people, so that they know where you are, because then they can kind of land into that space and place, versus you're all over the place and scattered and they're confused. And so that confusion exists. So to me, that's what I did, was I just communicated with my people. Here's what I'm up to. Even though hitting send felt like, like a punch to the ego, I still knew I just had to get current with my people and let them know what I'm up to now.
I think what's super interesting is that for you, it felt like the biggest deal in the world. For them, they're just like, oh, that's cool. Okay, new thing. It's like we're the center of our own world. We forget that everybody else is the center of their own world.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Simple Green Smoothies, which is probably I was introduced to you maybe after you had left, but the legacy of that was very present with you. I'm curious, how did you pivot into Simple Green Smoothies? Did you know that it was going to become what felt really like the juggernaut that it did become?
Absolutely not. It was kind of like strike one, Little Sprouts Playhouse, strike two, Family Sponge parenting blog. But the parenting blog was kind of our segue into Simple Green Smoothies. So I was creating an ebook about green smoothies because I started drinking green smoothies, but I didn't think it was ever going to become a business or I was going to talk about it. It was just like one recipe on the parenting blog type of thing and how it's changed my life. And I had a friend who was on Instagram, and she's My Healthy Dish. She has millions of followers on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all the things. But at the time, we both had zero. And I think she probably grew to 30,000 followers on Instagram. She's like, you got to get on Instagram. And we were on Facebook and Twitter, and we're like, oh, not another social media platform. Like, I don't really want to do it. She's like, what if you just talk about the green smoothies? Because food is really popular on Instagram. And I was like, ugh. And my business partner, Jen, was like, I'm going to keep focusing over here on our parenting blog and this ebook that we're going to sell for our moms. And like, sure, you go play around on Instagram if you want. So it wasn't even a true business strategy. It was just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall again. And I started sharing green smoothie recipes on there. And I remember my friend said, if you fill your feed up to 9 photos, like once you have a full page of photos, I'll give you a shout out. And that gave us 800 followers. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then I remember there was this fitness Instagrammer who was doing an in-person training. And I think this is important to say in person, because a lot of times we think everything, relationships and connections are built online, but it's the in-person stuff that I think accelerates growth. And I brought her a green smoothie. So then we took a picture together. I posted it. She shared it on her feed. And that grew our following from 800 followers to 3,000 followers. And we were just like, oh, we've hit the jackpot. And from there, I just knew there was some traction on us sharing these recipes. And we had seen other health bloggers like Chris Carr. There was this green smoothie book, but everything was very scientific, education-based, just pictures of glass, like green glass sludge. And I was like, this isn't appealing. So I decided to take pictures of the ingredients, the fresh ingredients. So the red strawberries, the orange peach, like just vibrant, and also the exact measurements, because that was something that I was very scared about when I was making my first smoothie. I'm like, I need to know how many cups. I don't know what a handful is. I don't know, eyeball it. So I was really kind of creating what I wanted to exist for me when I was exploring green smoothie recipes, was tell me eggs. I don't want to mess this up, because if I taste that kale or that spinach, I'm not going to be happy. Yeah. And so that was the differentiator. And then I remember being intentional. I told Jen, my business partner, I said, for the next 9 months, all we're going to talk about is green smoothies. So we went all in on just health benefits of the ingredients that go inside the smoothies. And we kind of stopped talking about all the other parenting type things like arts and crafts with your kids and intentional living. And we just went all in on green smoothies. Like that was kind of the commitment. Like we're going all in for the next month and let's see what happens. And then it was the 30-day green smoothie challenge. that really took us off and grew our following from 3,000 to 30,000 Instagram followers and also 30,000 email subscribers. So we created a challenge that you had to opt into. So that diversified and not just having everyone on social media. And that was really the piece that took us off, was doing this 30-day green smoothie challenge every quarter, 4 times a year, and giving people a free experience where we add lots of value, give them recipes, shopping lists. And in 1 year, we went from that first 30,000 subscribers to 200,000 email subscribers and grew our following. I mean, by year 2, we had over 400,000 followers on Instagram.
I have so many questions. So I'm going to leave the money one to the end. But what I'm really curious about is your business partnership relationship. So and I think that this is important to say because I don't know many business partnerships that worked. You have the ones that really work, and then you have many relationships that end in the graveyard, which is really bad because many business partnerships begin as friendships. And so I'm really interested in understanding what the dynamic was like and how you split roles and what the relationship was like, especially at the beginning, like these stages.
It's interesting because we were in the same moms group, but we never really hung out. So we kind of had this, it's like this degree of separation, but I knew that she was doing website designs. I was just kind of we were both just following each other. And I remember for the family sponge, I wanted a newsletter template designed. And she's like, it's normally $150, but for you, I'll do it for $75. And in that, she had wanted to create and build a blog, and I wanted to monetize something online. And so we knew, and we didn't have like a written business agreement. So we don't follow this pathway, but it was truly just an email. Like, okay, my ownership is marketing and monetization, and hers would be brand and visual design. So there was a very clear distinction, but we had that written in email of kind of what were the lanes that we were owning from the beginning, but we didn't have an LLC at that time. We were just kind of 2 stay-at-home moms trying to make ends meet. So that was for us, I think the clear distinction of who was doing what was very helpful. Of like, she's bringing the brand aesthetic and making us look legit from day one. And I'm figuring out, well, how do we make money and how do we reach the most amount of people that we can?
I think that that's super interesting as well, because what I am assuming from you is that you both valued what the other person was bringing to the table. And I think that for me, at least in my business partnership, that got a little bit skewed. We were like, I'm the most important person. Whereas it doesn't sound so much like you had that battle of the egos to deal with. Is that fair to say?
That would be fair to say. And also there was something I had kind of more of the vision ideation, and she had like that execution completion component.
Perfect.
And that piece was really helpful. So when we did have our business divorce, when I sold my half of the company to her to continue running, I knew what I needed in my future businesses on my own. And I also knew I wouldn't have to split 50% of the business to get that need met of investing in visual designer, web branding, someone who can get things to the finish line and completion. So for us, we were such a gift to each other. And I really borrowed a lot of the skills that I learned from her that I could bring into my next business evolution too. So it was a gift. And also there was a point where it's like, I just want to do my own thing, so it did get to that space and place where I knew simple green smoothies wasn't it. And there was a bigger calling on my heart. And that was a big heartbreak and disruption for both of us in kind of creating that separation too.
So I'm curious, because you just answered some of the other questions that I had. How did you monetize it? Because it sounds like you were amazing at building community. You had these free challenges, but then how did people pay you?
Yeah. So the first time, it was interesting, that first challenge, we were so scared to charge. And this comes a lot, especially from people who come from the mom blogging area. You know, you're like, just value, value, content, free, 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 build the community, love, love, love. And I remember I felt so scared to charge just $5. Basically, we packaged the 30-day green smoothie challenge into an ebook. And it's like, well, they already they already got it for free. They could just find it in their emails, but we packaged it, made it look beautiful. We sold it for $5 and we did $8,000 in 7 days. And I was like, oh, we have a business.
Yeah.
And so it was finally, we were out of red. We were so excited. And with that money, it wasn't game changing money, but we invested in getting support at that time. So we had hired a friend who could basically do social media comments, email, kind of just helping us with some of the admin things. So I was like, if I answer another FAQ question about blah, I'm going to burn out. I'm not going to want to do this. And so we reinvested that money into a person to support us in the day-to-day tasks. And then we also invested in B School, Marie Forleo's online business school. That was kind of like reinvesting back into the business. And I think all we did was the extra money is we just paid ourselves back for the parenting blog where we were in the red. We were like negative thousands of dollars. So that was kind of what we did with that first money. I think that's important to hear too, of reinvesting back into the business versus kind of taking it home and like running with it. And so obviously that didn't pay the bills, but what we did from that challenge was where we were going to do more challenges for free, and that we surveyed our community to create what turned into Fresh Start 21, which was a plant-based cleanse. And it was really the next step for me when I started green smoothies. I was like, I don't know. I don't want meat anymore. I just want a little break. And so we partnered with a holistic nutritionist. We partnered with a food photographer, and we built out this comprehensive PDF meal plan. And we launched it in August of 2013. And we did $86,000 in 10 days. And then that was like the changer for us. We're like, what are we doing? What did we just do? My husband, like, you can leave your full-time job. You can go do what you love, build your music program out. It was very life-changing for us to make that amount of money in such a short amount of time. And then that product would go on to make over $1 million in sales in 2 years. And it was an under $99 value.
And the reason that you were able to make that amount of money is because you had focused on also building up your email list and your social media following through the challenges.
Yes.
What do you think that your biggest lessons about community were that you learned during that time? Because it's actually a very short period of time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people think they can't recreate that now.
Yeah.
But I really believe you can. And I've seen people do it. But the lessons that I learned in the building community is, one, adding value, really connecting to what people want. And not everyone wants to be in this business, but I felt like we were the Google of green smoothies on Instagram. So it's like, we know you're going to be a little lazy. You're not going to want to look it up, even though you could Google it. And what we would see a lot of our competitors is like, go look that up online yourself. Like, go do it. And we brought the content to where they were hanging out. So we were creating convenience. And then we were also creating connection. For me, I was very intentional about responding to every comment, to acknowledging every person who took the time to acknowledge us. We would acknowledge them right back. And we continued to do things like that, even having our team replicate that and being able to respond to every comment, sending, surprise and delight gift cards of like, hey, thank you so much for posting that photo of your kid drinking green smoothie. Here's a $25 gift card. Just loving up on people and really becoming their favorite person in that lane. So that was where we were finding the distinctions of what was different about us than our other competitors? We were also young moms and we were kind of a little hip. And so it's like using words like rock star and awesome. And also we were like, we also eat at Taco Bell. Like we were just trying to be real, approachable people versus like, we know things, we're scientific, we're education. I don't have a college degree, So I had to, instead of looking at that as a weakness, that I'm not educated enough, I looked at that as a unique differentiator. And something that I say in my book is that there is no unique messages, only unique messengers. We weren't the only green smoothie folks out there, but we were finding, how are we different than everyone else around us? And actually, let's amplify that.
Yeah. I have to say, I have quoted you maybe a million times with there are no unique messengers. No unique messages, only unique messages. I think that it is one of the things that so deeply landed with me too. So thank you so much for the gift that keeps on giving every time I have a crisis of confidence. I think that this is just so incredible. And when you were saying about other people being able to do this too, I immediately thought of Dr. Mindy Peltz, who is the author of Fast Like a Girl. And the way that I use her YouTube channel is exactly the way that you just described. It's like, what does Dr. Mindy think about this? What does Dr. Mindy think about that? She's done a video on everything. The only thing that I would say is that it has taken her a lot longer to build her community than what it did you guys, which may or may not be a time thing, but there are also people that come flying out of the gates. And I think also what is interesting is that you just honed in. You said, we're not going to speak about anything else. And there is, even though that drives so many of us creatives wild,
Me
the idea
too.
of narrowing in your focus like that, it works because you become the go-to person for X. How, and I hear what you said right at the beginning, like when something doesn't feel good anymore, I know that it's okay for me to quit. I'm curious though, you left Simple Green Smoothies on a high. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. I think it's much easier to leave something when you feel like it's on the outs. And so I'm curious about that thought process. What was going on and the courage required.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when we did that launch, August 2013, the $86,000 in 10 days, I already knew there was another calling on my heart to go in a different direction. So the hard thing was actually to stay longer.
Right.
For me. I remember I went to a mastermind with my friend and mentor, Jonathan Fields, a 2-day. And I was like, I want to help mom entrepreneurs. Like, I love this marketing and behind the scenes, and just kind of, even before Simple Green Smoothies or Family Sponge, it was like, there was this, I just wanted to help other women live more intentional lives. And I remember him saying like, ooh, maybe you should just stay in a little longer. Like, it was like this, like, we're just getting started. And I'm happy that I stayed. But I want to say that because usually, at least for me, it takes about 2 to 3 years to get the courage to actually go. Mm-hmm. And that can be for people in relationships, in partnerships, in bodies of work. And so for that, I was like, continuing to build, but I was always building with the intention that I knew I wanted to move somewhere else. And so I was doing speaking and podcasting and kind of talking more about the behind the scenes of business, which is probably where you found me, right? Like, I'm kind of sharing the strategies of how we did the 30-day green smoothie challenge. I wasn't so interested in kind of the recipes and those things. And we got a big book deal for Simple Green Smoothies, which came out in 2015. And we had another offer for a high book deal for our second book. And I had a friend that said, you don't want to create a book about the thing that you don't want to be known for. And so I knew in that moment, I was like, all right, I think I've got to pull out. And it was really hard. It was very challenging. I know my business partner, Jen, wasn't envisioning Simple Green Smoothies, the business, without me in it. So there was a
Mm.
lot of grieving. There was a lot of also, then we have valuations and money and all of that gets weaved in. And then we're women and like, what are we worth? And just a lot of stuff. And so that piece was really, really hard. And I had a huge fear that if I stepped out of that company and I was no longer the co-founder of Simple Green Smoothies, no one would ever invite me to be on their podcast again. No one would ever invite me to speak on their stages. I just booked a 5-figure speaking event in a couple of months, right? Like, but those are the hyper obsession of like, nobody's going to want me if I'm not attached to this thing that is so sexy and the numbers are so big and all of that. So I was like holding on of like not wanting to let go of the where the metrics and the value and the worth seemed like it was, and kind of saying like, I'm not worthy without these pieces. But I knew my heart was like, I was feeling drained and burnt out in the business. Like it was not aligned with how I like to express myself, which is very distant and far away from the people and masses of numbers. I'm like, I want intimacy. I want to be in person. I want a podcast. I want to be doing events. And so the business model, right? Back to product, maker, fit. It wasn't the right fit for me anymore. It was right for a season because that money did a whole lot for me and my family, but it wasn't the right for what I want to be doing with my life long term. And so I had to come to terms with doing the buyout and going through that process. And it was November 2016 when I sold my half of the business, signed the contract, and transferred everything over to Jen.
Was money ever a consideration for you? Like, along with nobody will ever want me if I am not part of the business, which I really resonate with my hypnobirthing. That's exactly, nobody's gonna believe me if I don't have my own business. Were you ever worried about replicating the same type of financial success? Did you put that pressure on yourself?
Yes, I partially, and I also created a bit of a resolution around that too. So something that I was doing probably a year to maybe even 2 years, but actually probably 2 years before I exited the company, I started really building my personal brand on the side and reinvesting the money that I was making from Simple Green Smoothies into my website, into photography, and to every quarter. I had this 2-hour date with myself from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Mondays that was titled Heart Projects. And that's when I would work, that was my focus time to work on my personal brand. And I would do tests every quarter, like a 2-day mastermind, a 6-week business incubator, like just trying one-on-one coaching, 90-minute sessions, and just trying to find like, how would I want to serve on my own? And I actually got my personal brand business to 6 figures on the side while I was doing Simple Green Smoothies. So that gave me a bit of cushion to like, and I'm the primary contributor to my family for finances. And so I knew that I couldn't just rip the Band-Aid, leave, and the net will appear. Like I had to be very intentional and focused because of that. And I remember asking Jonathan Fields, I was like, am I crazy for leaving? The same person that I talked to in 2013 who was like, stay, don't leave just yet. But then we got to that place and he was like, you're asking the wrong question. The question you're asking he said, the question is, can magic strike twice? Yeah. And the answer is yes. And so that was what I leaned on of like, okay, it's me I'm trying to believe that I can't recreate this magic of what I created here, that's like impossible. So I had to lean into the possibility that actually magic can strike twice. And so I left with that type of momentum. Doesn't mean that when I signed on the dotted line, I didn't go through a whole identity crisis for a million years and was like, who am I? What do I want to be when I grow up? What do people know me for? What's my niche? All of that, just lots of confusion. But in the confusion, I still leaned into experiments and testing, which is the thing that I do, is like, let me test and see, does this feel good? If it feels good, keep doing it. If it doesn't, stop.
I think it feels really important to say that as soon as you say, which is an amazing question, by the way, like, do you think that magic can strike twice? But what is so overwhelmingly true about you and being in your presence, and I think what is activated as soon as anybody is in your presence, whether that is online or in person, is that you are the magic, you know? And so I am curious about at what point, or was that the point when you were like, oh, I'm the magic? Like, it's not a case of
Yeah.
can it strike twice? It's like, it's me.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't get that message. That would have been nice early on. But I work, my life coach, Rebecca McLaughlin, who I still work with today, and she's the resident mindset coach in all of my coaching programs with my clients, I had to unpack that it was my essence that you can't take away from me when I leave from a company, right? Like my thumbprints, my like everything is there in that business. And as I build and create whatever it is next, that my essence cannot be taken away from me. And that, what you're saying, is the magic. But I did not interpret that right away. And it's interesting, right? Because I talk about leading with love over metrics, your net worth, don't, unhook your net worth, your self-worth from your net worth, all of these things. And yet I was still trapped in all in that of believing that the numbers and the metrics mattered more than me, my essence, and my own personal magic coming from within.
Yeah. You are the primary contributor when it comes to finances within your family. And this is something that I have explored a lot, because I think that frequently for female entrepreneurs who take on that role, it is you're in the business building world, very masculine energy. Your then primary contributor still feels like masculine energy. You are one of the most tapped in feminine energy women like ever. I'm really curious about that dance for you. Is it that because your natural essence is very much I've written a book about infinite receiving. I feel like you just embody this. I'm open to receiving. Like there's no push. Like that's the whole point of who you are. How much is that taken work, or is that just naturally where you come from? So that dance and that struggle between the masculine and feminine in the home, it hasn't been there. Like I'm interested about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel like, so I'm a Taurus with a Pisces rising and a Virgo moon. So I was just like, oh, so there's the sensory grounded earthy with the dreamer, and then the Virgo of this like organization and like get it done. So I feel I have a very balanced integration of masculine and feminine within me, of like big picture vision to baby steps. And I think that's my magic when I'm working with my clients too, of like, okay, what is it that you want? Big picture. And then it's like, all right, now let's open up your calendar and see when will you focus on that and how much time do you have, right? So I definitely have that balanced dance. And again, I think it really comes back to what we started of like love. Like I need to feel good and in how I'm making, creating and building. And then in the home, my husband and we've been together for 20 years, married for 18. And, the pandemic worked that relationship. And we are in conversations about masculine and feminine energy. But one thing for him, he thought he wanted to be a stay-at-home dad and he didn't, but he tried it. He didn't like it. And so he's like, I need to make my own money. Yeah. I need to do my own body of work. And also for me, I didn't realize that, but I needed him to make his own money too, and to do his own work. And we have agreements. I know I married an artist, a musician, an actor, like that piece. So, and he's been able to build his own business, making 6 figures, teaching kids, doing what he loves and having his own. So that piece for me, coming back to marry someone who loves what they do too.
Yeah.
So instead of him being a real estate agent, I definitely had dreams of like, make all that money so I could stay home with my baby. And I think our lives would be different if he did take on that role. That I would probably step into more mother nurturer. But because I'm in this season, I'm like, you get one baby and we are moving. Like this is my creation energy instead of it in like creating more family members, I'm creating work and service in the world. And so
Sure.
we have very clear conversations around that. And he's still doing his inner work and connecting to his sacred masculine, and I'm doing my work. So that there is a dance in that. And we also are in a lot of conversations and around that space of how do we hold that feminine and masculine energy within our own partnership, as well as within how we show up in our work and financial contribution too.
Was it a big deal for you to recognize and acknowledge that you did actually want him to go out and earn his own money?
I feel like he knew before I did, which is great. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, that feels good. And I think also in this season of moving through the pandemic too, because my husband had a it's like he sees people in person. So there was that dance too, and finding that space and place, and a whole lot of couples therapy, a whole lot of somatic work, and all of that piece. But I probably recognized later on, probably in the last couple of years, that I need him to be in his full essence and expression of who he wants to be in the world. Like, I am not going to be turned on if you're not on stage doing your work and how you want to be fulfilled in the world. So if he would have gone the stay-at-home dad path, it probably wouldn't have worked. Do you know what I mean? Like, because that's actually my attraction. I'm very attracted to talent like that, like singing, performance, like expression work. And so him doing his work and continuing to grow and evolve in mastery around that is very sexy to me.
Yeah, I love this. I think I'm deliberately having this conversation more and more because I realize that we are the first generation of women who are actually having to navigate this. And I think that when you started in entrepreneurship, and you said it like 10 years ago, and for you longer, 15 years ago, actually the vision board was retire your husband. And you did say retire your husband and do what you love, but there's a whole piece around what happens when you give your partner that level of freedom because they don't have to work anymore. There's a process that has to happen when it comes to finding what they love. And when you come from a coaching background or an empowerment background or you can do, it's like you also, again, you very much have to understand that you're your partner's partner, not their coach, not their therapist, not their...
Oh, yes.
Otherwise, again, you're occupying space that is not good for the polarity of the relationship. And we are only finding that out now. And so I think that it's really important for people like you who have been able to weather the storm, and people like me who were not able to weather the storm. And I think, everything happens for a reason. And our season was 15 years, which I'm very proud of. And we had a great season, but understanding and accepting and identifying these stories and the importance of the role and polarity in your role and their role and all of it, I think it's something that really needs to be discussed.
I love that you are having this conversation, because also just the dynamic of money and power, right? Like, there's a part, and I know in conversations with my friends who are primary financial contributors, that there's a power play in it. There's something that we get from that exchange, right? Of like, well, I make the decisions, the final decision. Like, it's there. I've seen the dynamics of like, ooh, I'm kind of taking on that, like the working man and the stay at home, like, all of there's power dynamics being played out. And so I love that you named the part of like, my husband actually refused to take any like coaching strategy from me as much. I'm like, I can help you. I can, all the things. And then also very clear of like, you need a therapist, you need that, like, really, like, that's not for me to hold that space for. Like, I have someone who's holding emotional space for me, and you need someone who can hold emotional, unfiltered, like, say what you need to say about me to somebody else, right? Like, so that work of women being able to have the boundaries and the clarity of like, we can't be everything to everyone all the time. We need to kind of really diversify our support.
In She Builds, you write about your love framework. Can you break down? Because you have the podcast Lead with Love, and in the book, you literally lead it with love. So, can we just talk about the love framework?
Yes. Oh, I love it so much. So the way that the book is broken down is in 4 parts: lead, optimize, visualize, and expand. That's LOVE. And it's really about building with love, but we first have to move away from the cycle of fear, FEAR, which is forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, and rigidity. And that is what gets us in the burnout cycle, where we're on the hustle culture hamster wheel of trying to make things happen. And then we get so tired that then we avoid and we hide out in our beds and we Netflix and we chill with ourselves and all the things. And then we're like, well, I made this plan and I made this goal, so I've got to stick to it. That's the rigidity that gets us stuck. And we just keep receding that forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, rigidity. And so I built a framework within She Builds that is about love, that we can counter that, because I believe that hustle culture isn't working for women. It's honestly not working for anyone. I've had men read the book and leave reviews as well, which I love so much. But lead is about leading from the inside out and creating an intentional vision that is coming from within versus creating a definition of success that is external and all these shoulds and have tos, and really being able to be intentional and have the support to bring that vision to life. And then optimize is about not just optimizing your time and your energy, which I talk about. There's a chapter called Reclaim Your Time and Energy, but also optimizing your joy in your business. Like, I believe that, especially over these last few years, that we've built a lot of resentment in our businesses. And if you think about it, it's like the same way if you build resentment in a relationship, a partnership, that walls go up and you actually don't want to spend time in that relationship. And so then the business can atrophy in that space. And so we have to really find, how do we reclaim that joy within our businesses and how we show up and optimizing our time and energy. And then visualize is about really bringing that vision into action and putting it out in the world. And so I talk about the strategic quarterly planning process, your VIPs, which are your very important projects, and being able to say yes to about 1 to 3 projects per quarter, right? That's how I was able to do create a 6-figure extra revenue stream while I was still in Simple Green Smoothies. And then expand is really about deepening. Once you've built a solid foundation for your business, everything becomes much more easier, but we also have to sustain ourselves in the process. So this is, for me, it's about refilling our wells and being able to use self-care, and not just bubble baths and facial, but really emotional self-care, of taking care of ourselves as a business strategy, not as a nice to have, nice to do, but that's actually what sustains us and keeps us in love with our work. Because it's like, who wants to be in a relationship where you never get to rest or have fun, or just, be in that space and place? So for me, expand is about deepening your roots in something where it's like, where I'm planted is where I want to be planted, right? And being able to be in that space to expand. But you've got to do lead, optimize, and visualize to make sure you're aligned. And then we can build a sustainable business from the inside out.
One of the questions that you asked me when we worked together is a question that I continue to ask myself and ask my clients now, is, how do you desire to feel today? And I remember saying to you, I want to feel alive. I want to feel orgasmic. I want to feel turned on. I want to feel tuned in. And it was so clear to me that how I was living my life was not giving me the opportunity to feel any of those feelings on a day-to-day basis. And actually just asking that question and then bringing intention to who I was being and what I was doing on a day-to-day basis absolutely led me to my biggest months in business financially back then, giving myself that permission. So simple, but so potent, so powerful, and so easily forgotten and missed. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. I love it. I love it. And that's the intentionality, right? Of carving out enough time and space to think about what it is that you want.
Mm.
How do you want to feel? And then what will feel good in order to get you closer to that vision, and for us to start to do that dance and just reflection of like, what is working? What's not working? What might we do differently to shift and keep evolving? And it's everything is very cyclical. And we're going to keep repeating these pieces. And everything that I put in She Builds is really everything that I've worked on with my clients, where they've just started their business or they're running a $5 million a year business. Like the tools and strategies are the same for everyone. Like back to basics, the foundations is so, so important.
Yeah, they're the questions that you ask in your quarterly planning process. I'm like, yes,
it's all in there. I didn't hold back.
I would love to ask you before we finish up. I have 6 questions that I always ask people in celebration of the launch of Infinite Receiving. Thank you so much for giving me your beautiful recommendation. What does Infinite Receiving mean to you?
It means openness to receive love in full, full, full abundance. Just open, receive abundantly, love.
Beautiful. How good are you at doing that at the moment?
I feel I'm really good at receiving. And I will say that it was in 2019 when I had a season of grief and loss. My father passed away. My 16-year-old brother passed away, and we put down our 13-year-old dog. And this all happened within 6 months. And before that, I would give love, like give, over giving, over responsible, over caretaking. And when I was just depleted and heartbroken and grieving, I had to learn how to receive love, to be fully supported, to have no capacity to reciprocate love in that season. And that really opened me up of how to receive in a very deep way.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because I remember during that time as well, you really went inwards, and it felt so, outside of, you had so much loss in such a short time. So, and of course you needed time, but it felt also very powerful to witness you saying, this is what I need for me. I'm battening down the hatches, and I'm just being with my heart right now. Really important.
Yeah. And giving myself that space, I was able to get to really allowing myself to grieve and process and minimize how I was showing up. I was able to get a multiple 6-figure book deal for She Builds. I had the cocoon and the safety to write the book with a lot of spaciousness and ease. And had I not allowed myself to fully surrender to how grief can take you out, because the opposite of that is folks will overwork and overfunction and burn themselves out and not give them space to express their emotions and feel the deep sadness. And we do that, like leaving a business, grief, right? All of that change of partnership, relationship, grief, death, loss, grief, and I think that we don't know as a society how to grieve. We haven't been connected to the rituals and ceremonies and that. But I think I had such good support and allowed myself to fully receive love that I could go all the way into the depths of grief and really heal. And I say in the book, you're not hiding, you're healing. And that so many of us put that of like, I'm hiding out. I haven't been on social. I haven't been on visible. I'm like, no. That was intentional. I'm taking care of myself so that I can come back a whole woman who can not only give, but also receive at the same time.
Thank you for the example. Necessary. Where or who in your life can you allow Where or who in your life right now can you allow to love you just a little bit more? The queen of receiving. More.
Right. That's such a great question. Okay. There was a couple people that came up, and then just a landing of my sister, Jamila.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your greatest attribute?
I would say compassion and deep listening in a non-judgmental way. Like I can sit, I can witness, I can hold space, I can hold visions. I get this reflection from my 16-year-old daughter. Like the fact that like my little human can feel that in my friendships and my husband, but deep listening with a lot of reverence and care.
What is one thing that you are consciously manifesting right now?
So interesting. I had a dream about us having our conversation last night because I was like, what is my dream? And I have this 10-year vision that I will write multiple books in multiple genres. I'm already on the path, right? From health and wellness to nonfiction business. But I'm consciously manifesting is to write more books, from a memoir to historical fiction to fantasy. Like it's a vision that's planted, and it's a big, big one. And I've got a lot of creation work and studying and learning to do to be on that path.
I love that. And my final question is where can you allow yourself to be a little more supported right now?
I would say physically, logistically at home, because I feel like the pandemic shook up a lot of like house cleaner, and we quite haven't found the right consistent person yet. We have meals being delivered, but yesterday my husband and I were doing meal prepping together, and I was like, oh, we could outsource and delegate this, So there's like home things logistically that I know, but also we had a lot of fun because we were playing the Strokes and listening to music and talking while we were meal prepping together. But I want to prioritize finding really good people to kind of fill some of those holes at home, because it feels like it's been harder to find consistent folks.
Beautiful. This conversation has been so rich and so nourishing and so beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. Can you share with everybody where they can find more of your magic?
Yeah, going to jadahtsellner.com will get you to all the things. I'm also at Jadah Sellner on all the socials. And I was wondering if it would be okay to gift a vision masterclass with your listeners, to really go through the future vision prompts and questions that are in the book, but they could get access to it for free, because I think when we're in seasons of reinvention, that we can really ground ourselves in what do we really want, but we have to sit and think about what those questions are. So if you go to shebuilds.com/vision, and what should the code be, Susie, for them to enter for your community? Is it infinite? Is it?
I think it should be receiving. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, great. So put in the code receiving, and you will receive this gift for free to be able to, I will walk and guide you through answering questions of how you want to feel in your business and your life in the next 3 years and beyond.
Perfection. Absolute perfection. Thank you so, so much. We will make sure that all of the information is in the show notes, and we'll make sure that it is emailed out to everybody. And I just want to say thank you so much once again. You're just a delight. And for you, my gorgeous human beings, I want to say if you have loved this episode as much as we have, please tag us on social media and please share this episode with at least one person you know will benefit from some of the so many golden nuggets that Jadah shared in this episode. We would be truly, truly grateful. And in the meantime, please remember that faith plus action equals miracles. Thank you for listening to Infinite Receiving with me, Susie Ashworth. I'd love to share with you my Infinite Receiving activation audio. Go to susieashworth.com/activate infinite receiving.